Welcome to Brother Miller's. Now, this is Old Testament notes, and this is an introduction, and I'm going to talk a little bit about symbolism. And I got to be honest with you, I recorded this last week, and I went home and talked to my wife about it, and I just said, I don't like it. And so I deleted it. And then I recorded it again, thinking that maybe it was just the way I presented it, maybe I stuttered a little bit too much, and then realized after I recorded it, that's not why. I like videos, I like lessons that are relevant to me and applicable. And I think that's why I have the teaching notes at the end. Here's something I think that you can teach in your family or something that you can teach in a Sunday school class. And what's contained in this little introduction, there's not a lot of it. There's a few things up front. I talk a little bit about what to look for in the Old Testament. And then I'm talking about, hey, here's how we got the English translation, because I think it's good to know. And then I talk about some symbolism that's really cool, but I don't know how relevant it is. I don't know how applicable it is. So I just tell you that right up front with this introduction. I get a little excited. I like it. I've been a little geeky on a few things. At any rate, this is my introduction to, well, Brother Miller's Old Testament notes. Think about what we're going to study this year in the Old Testament. What's the most important thing that we're going to study? As you look at this picture, you see a lot of words. There are a lot of Old Testament words. Ark and priest and lawgiver and Passover and lamb, Savior, prophet, Almighty God, Messiah. But I hope as you look at it, you also see what's in the white space. This is the Old Testament to me. There is a focus on Jesus. And sometimes it's in the white space. All the symbolism, everything is pointing towards Christ. Christ is going to come. They're excited about it. They're excited for his atonement. And sometimes the symbolism or the events, we get kind of caught up in that. We get caught up in the stories. But we can never lose sight of what the most important thing is that we're going to be taught in the Old Testament. It is about Jesus Christ. And I hope that every time you're with me, you're going to see that Jesus really is there. And that's what we're going to talk about. And I hope to build faith in him. The Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew on animal skins. And you kind of get them in the scrolls. And if they're a little bit nicer, you put little sticks in there. And once you start getting a few of them, people were wondering, okay, how do we put them all together? Well, there are 5 of these scrolls that are often put into one scroll. They're the top 5. They're written by Moses. And a lot of times they're called the Pentateuch. And you'll hear that often. And also you hear the word Torah, because in these 5 books it contains the Torah, or the law that's written by Moses. So I guess in one sentence, the Torah is the law of God that was revealed to Moses and recorded in the first 5 books of the Hebrew Scriptures, or the Pentateuch. The first 5 books are known as the law, and you start getting that throughout all the Old Testament. They'll talk about, I study the law, seek the law. Like, for example, in Ezra chapter 7, verse 10. For Ezra prepared his heart to seek the law of the Lord, and to do it, and to teach in Israel statutes and judgments. Prophets throughout the Old Testament study the first 5 books of Moses. Good example is Nephi. Now, he says in 1 Nephi 19, and I did read many things unto them which were written in the books of Moses. That's the first 5 books. Now the rest of the verse says, I read to him Isaiah because I love Isaiah. It's going to bring people closer to Christ and bring them hope. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But I read many things from the first 5 books. Those first 5 books are called the law. And if you're breaking down how the Bible's organized, the next little section of books, there's 12 of them, and they're historical in nature, historical summaries. After that, you have a grouping of what you'd call the poetry. Okay, let's get all the scrolls that are poetry and put them here. And then at the end, let's put the prophets. And they organize it that you have the major prophets because of the length of their writing. Then you have the minor prophets. There's 12 of them. Don't write as much, but they're at the end. That is how the Bible is organized. There are 39 books, and this is a total geeky aside thing, and some people think this is really kind of cool. I do, because I want to remember how many books there are in the Old Testament. I still have to remember the numbers 3 and 9. And the Old Testament, I just squished together 39 books. New Testament, all I got to remember is 3 and 9. But in the New Testament, the Savior is often saying, forgive 7 times. He's using multiplication in the New Testament. I know they probably did in the Old Testament too, but go with me on this. New Testament, 3 times 9 equals 27 books. How many books are there in the Old Testament? 39. How many books in the New Testament? 27. At the beginning of the year, especially if I'm in a seminary class, I will take time and I'll sing the song. And this is in children's book 114, the books in the Old Testament. I don't know that I'll do this in gospel doctrine, but with youth or in a family, I'll sing it because I want them to know the order of the books in the Old Testament. It is such a blessing for decades to come if they say something like Micah, and they go, okay, I know that's towards the end, and they can sing the song. So as we're starting in class, I'll do that. And we'll say, okay, turn to Leviticus. And so I'll say, where's Leviticus? I'll say, oh, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. There it is. And then I'll be very free with page numbers. Always giving out page numbers. And electronic scriptures helps even more to know the order of the books in the Old Testament. Now, think about how we get the Old Testament today. I mean, this is a little bit about that geeky section I talked to you about at the very beginning. You have the Hebrew writings, and then we're going to get translated in, eventually, a book of, for us, English edition. This is the King James Version. Well, originally, you can see it looks a little complicated. There was Hebrew documents, and all those scrolls in Hebrew are lost, the originals. We don't have Moses' handwriting. We don't have Isaiah's handwriting, but we know they are there. There was a translation that was made from the original, and it's called the LXX. Now that really is Latin for 70. The Hebrew text began to be translated into Greek in Alexandria about 280 BC. These early Greek translations were called the Septuagint, Latin for 70. Traditionally, there were 70 translators, hence its abbreviation LXX. Now, I'm not saying that they had the original written by Moses kind of documents, but maybe these are ones that have been copied and handed down and through generations and maybe many copies. But it's from that Hebrew, and that's lost. Well, there's another translation called the Vulgate. Latin became the most common language for early Christians. And in 382 AD, the Pope commissions one of the leading scholars of the time, Jerome, to make an updated Bible. This is Latin, a Latin Bible. And he calls it, his product, the Vulgate. And that plays an influence for centuries. There's also another one called the Masoretic text, or MT. Now, for the Old Testament, for King James translators, they use the Masoretic text, which is a direct translation from Hebrew, and they also said, okay, we have the Septuagint and we have the Vulgate. Let's use them to help us in the translation. They're using all the resources they have available to help them get a really good translation. The word Bible is from a Greek word. It means literally book. Could also mean scroll, parchment. So when you say the book, you're saying the Bible is the book. The Holy Bible, the Holy Biblos. The First Presidency has let us know that there is one edition that we quote from often in the church. They wrote this, quote, "Since the days of the prophet Joseph Smith, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has used the King James Version of the Bible for English-speaking members. While other Bible versions may be easier to read than the King James Version, in doctrinal matters, Latter-day Revelation supports the King James Version in preference to other English translations. All of the presidents of the church, beginning with the prophet Joseph Smith, have supported the King James Version by encouraging its continued use in the church. In light of all the above, it is the English language Bible used by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints." So in all of my videos, in my teaching, I use the King James Version because of this statement and what the prophets have taught. I will use alternative translations that may help something be a little more clear in the way it's phrased, but in doctrinal matters, I just stick with the King James Version. And there are versions out there, other translations, that doctrinally don't match what the King James Version says. And that's a real good note to say, okay, stay with the King James Version on it. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit to something that I just kind of geek out over. The symbolism in the Bible. I loved what Joseph Fielding McConkie wrote. He wrote this, quote, "Symbols are the timeless and universal language in which God in his wisdom has chosen to teach his gospel and bear witness of his Son." And to help with symbols in a lesson, I may just say, okay, pull out a $1 bill. What symbols do you see? Why did the designers of the $1 bill use an eagle? Why is there a pyramid there? What's the eye all about? And kids will just start realizing, hey, there's a lot that can be contained in a symbol. If a picture contains 1,000 words, a symbol contains 10,000. Symbolism in the Bible, there's symbols with objects and numbers and even names. So let me just give you a few examples of each. Let me start with names. As Joseph Fielding McConkie wrote, names play a significant part in the scriptural study. This is true of both name places and person names, and is illustrated by the countless instances in which the Bible pauses its narrative to explain the meaning of names. Name places are often a form of verbal archaeology, describing an area or setting. Personal names were considered of such importance that on occasion they were announced by heavenly messengers or some other form of revelation. It was so important that the name and the person match that in other instances names were changed by divine decree. Personal names served as miniature biographies, descriptions of character, testimonies or expressions of praise to God, reminders of significant events, and divine warnings. In short, Bible names served as memorials, symbols, and prophecies. So here's just a really cool thing just about the names of the patriarchs. You do the patriarchs in order, and I go kind of quick. Adam and Seth, Enos, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. And their names mean things. So this is kind of one meaning of each of their names. Starting with Noah, and I'm going to go up. Noah, his name means rest or comfort. That's kind of cool just in and of itself. Noah's bringing his family to a place where they could rest, kind of their promised land. Okay, I like that. You got Lamech, which means the despairing. I don't know about naming your kid that. Methuselah, his death shall bring. Enoch is about a teacher teaching. Jared shall come down. Mahalalel, the blessed God. Canaan means sorrow. Enos, mortal. Appointed is Seth. Adam, simple translation for his word, his name is Adam. But now we get into that symbolisms and what they teach. All these names, if you add 2 words, make a complete sentence. Man is appointed mortal sorrow, but the blessed God shall come down, teaching. His death shall bring the despairing rest or comfort. The names of the book of the Bible also have a lot of meaning. Genesis, or the origin. You get the creation story, the start of mankind. Exodus, leaving of the Exodus out of Egypt. Leviticus and Numbers. I mean, got a census, got Leviticus, all about the Levites. Here's the laws, the ordinances. Anyway, you get kind of just the names indicate here's what's going on. So Genesis, there's a focus on man's creation and relationship with God. Exodus, redemption from the consequences of sin. Now all of a sudden you stop and realize just an overview of each of these books is teaching about the plan of salvation. So let me go back. Genesis, creation, our relationship with God. That's where the plan starts. And Exodus teaches that there is redemption and consequences of sin. Leviticus teaches us how ordinances help us back to God. And Numbers teaches us about our time or our sojourn in the wilderness of the world. Deuteronomy reminds us that the law of God, prepares us to enter the promised land. And Joshua, the prophet Joshua, finishes our journey and brings us into the promised land. Isn't that just an overview of the plan of salvation? In Hebrew, Each letter of the alphabet has a numerical equivalent. The letters can be added to give a word a certain value. Those values become very symbolic. So as you can kind of see, each one, there's the tens, the ones, the tens, and the hundreds. Well, here's an instance, and maybe this gets a little bit geeky, but you think about the value of the name Adam. That's Adam in Hebrew, and it's 40 plus 4 plus 1, or you get 45. Now, the bottom of the screen, the value for the name of Eve, when the added letters in Hebrew are added up, 5 plus 6 plus 8 is 19. And you think, how do you get Adam and Eve together? What does it take to get Adam at 45 and Eve at 19 together? Well, the value needs to be 26. And if you take the name Jehovah and get the letters there, add them up, it's 26. I love that idea that with Christ and through his atonement and through the power, the sealing power, a man and a woman can be together forever. And just each of these numbers also have symbols with them. Like the number 1. You say we're number 1, okay? Number 1 is unity. It also represents God. The number 6 is symbolic of imperfection, or women or men in our imperfect state. Well, I already did, and 7 is symbolic of completeness or perfection. And I already mentioned it. If you want to get somebody who's in an imperfect state to a state of perfection, well, you add God. We add God to our lives, and we become perfect. Or, as the scriptures would teach, yea, come unto Christ and be perfected in him. Not by ourselves, but through him. There are objects in the Old Testament which are very symbolic, and they teach a lot. One of them is the ark. The ark, literally, the Hebrew word, means box or chest. That kind of makes sense. Okay, they're going to be riding over in this ark, ship, box, or chest. But it's covered with kafar. Kafar is the word pitch. It also means to cover with blood. And I just love the symbolism there. Genesis chapter 7, verse 1, the ark takes a righteous family from a sinful world to a new world. Or, just thinking of the symbolism, the ark, symbolic of Christ because of his blood, and it stays afloat because of the atonement or being covered through with his blood. The ark, Christ, takes a righteous family from a sinful world to a new world, a promised land, a celestial world. And if you want to go a little bit deeper and get really kind of geeky on it, Genesis chapter 8, verse 4. The ark rests on the 17th day of the 17th month. And then you get a reset in Exodus. Hey, let's redo the calendar. The 14th day of the 7th month, that's 3 days earlier, is going to now become the beginning of the Jewish calendar. And that's the Passover. And now you fast forward to days of Christ. Christ is going to eat the Passover with his disciples on the 14th day of the 7th month. So 3 days later is the 17th day of the 7th month. Well, there's the symbolism once again. 3 days later, on the 17th day of the 7th month, Christ, who is the ark, rises from the dead and brings life to a new world. Just like the ark, covered in pitch or kafar, brings a righteous family to a new world and life. I won't go into this right now, but the high priest's clothes that he wears is so symbolic. It teaches about Christ. The layout of the tabernacle, the portable temple that goes through the wilderness with Moses, is so symbolic. Where you have the outside world, or tabernacle representing the outside world, the outer courtyard can be symbolic of the telestial kingdom, the holy place, the terrestrial, and the celestial being a place, the presence of God. That would be the Holy of Holies. We'll cover all of the symbolism as we go through this year, but the main focus is maybe not all the symbols, maybe not all it means, but the symbols in the Old Testament point us towards Christ. And that's the most important things to be seeing with the symbols. So I had a couple teaching thoughts, but I would just say this year, Spend a little time right up front or to learn those Old Testament books in order. It will be a blessing, not only for the rest of the year, but for years to come. You may consider singing that church or that children's hymn. Symbols don't teach doctrine. Symbols help us to understand the doctrine. And the symbols in the Old Testament that help us most to understand the doctrine are the symbols that help us understand the doctrine of Christ. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me on my introduction to the Old Testament and symbolism. I hope a few things are helpful for you and it wasn't too geeky. I hope you have a wonderful day. Keep smiling.